Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to be discussing an article written by Jamelle Bouie from The Daily Beast. It deals with the way we have bias towards teenagers, particularly male teenagers. And in specific, when male teenagers are viewed as being dangerous, and particularly when they're being judged in complicity to a suspected crime. So you take two teenagers, 14-year-old black kid and a 14-year-old white kid, and how we perceive them is inherently different. So I'm going to read a couple of some pull quotes here. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology aimed at figuring out the extent to which black children are likely to be treated differently than their white peers solely based on race. More specifically, the authors wanted to figure out the extent to which black kids are dehumanized. Children in most societies are considered to be a distinct group with characteristics such as innocence and the need for protection. Author Philip Adiba Goff of UCA told the Psychology Association, "Our research found that black boys can be seen as responsible for their actions at an age when white boys benefit from the assumption that children are essentially innocent." Now, what was interesting is that they did this study, and they came to the research data that people perceive black teens as being 4.53 years older than they actually are. So the example I gave before I read the pull quote, a 14-year-old, two boys, white and black, both committing the same crime, say spray painting a wall. The 14-year-old white kid is viewed as a 14-year-old white kid, whereas the black kid is being viewed as an 18 to 19-year-old adult. That is going to shade how people perceive them in the legal system. And the police were even a little higher. Police view them as 4.59 years. So almost 4.6 years older than their actual age. There's one more pull quote from this article I'd like to read, these last two passages. During the George Zimmerman trial, right-wing bloggers circulated a photo of the quote-unquote real Trayvon Martin, who in their telling was muscled, heavily tattooed thug and not an innocent 17-year-old. In reality, it was a picture of The Game, a 34-year-old rapper. If you want a clearer illustration of what bias and racism can do to people, there it is. And I think that is exactly the problem. And the Trayvon Martin case is one of the best examples I can think of. He was a 17-year-old kid, legally a minor, not able to make the decisions as an adult. Expected to do things that maybe weren't the wisest because he's a 17-year-old minor. And we all made stupid mistakes when we were 17. Because some of us, though, have a benefit that others don't. I was judged as a 17-year-old. Well, mostly I was. I was often thought of being older. I started going bald at 15, so last time I got carded when I was 17. So maybe I was being judged as a 21-year-old. But the reality is that legally, I was 17, and I would be perceived by the court system as 17. Yet the police and the general public would have viewed a black kid in that same situation that I was in at 17 as being 22. And that's crazy. And that's how we send kids to jail. How we try kids as an adult when they aren't adults. A 14-year-old committing a crime, even a heinous crime, is not the same as a 24-year-old or a 44-year-old. Their mental processes haven't developed. Most human beings don't fully achieve cognitive maturity until they are 25. Go talk to a cognitive behavior therapist and a psychologist. They'll explain this to you. So judging a 14-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid as an adult, and the perception of the public in the Trayvon Martin case was he was an adult. People passing pictures of Trayvon Martin around, when in actuality it was a 34-year-old rapper called The Game. Someone I'd never heard of before this article. But, what does that matter, right? Who cares if our perceptions are skewed by 5 years? It matters a lot, folks. It's how we come down with sentences that are too harsh. It's how we send kids to jail and to prison when they shouldn't be in prison. And yet we let 17-year-old white kids get away with all kinds of things all the time. Oh, and let's not mention the fact that if they're members of a sports team, it's even worse. Why do we do this? I want answers. I want to know, why do we inherently perceive black men as being more violent? And I think one of the answers is that the media creates this. It's the hysteria that makes Americans think they are living in constant danger, even though we were experiencing the lowest point of violent crime in decades. It's the same media that tells you that your children are going to be snatched off the street every single second. That if you let your eyes move just for a moment, they're gone. And in actuality, 200 kids a year in America are kidnapped. 100 of them returned. Those are tragic responses, by the way, realities. But it's not the numbers that the media will tell you. They'll tell you 1 million kids a year disappear off our streets, and they don't. They're runaways and throwaways. Kids just tossed away by their family because they don't want them. Or they're abducted by family members and because of custody circumstances. But they don't talk about that. They just keep throwing that number up there constantly. 1 million kids, 1 million kids, 1 million kids. Black kids are dangerous. Black adults are dangerous. Black males are dangerous. And we have that hammered into our skulls. And the reality is that they're not. They're kids. And they're people. And we need to start looking at this objectively and not subjectively. And we need to stop putting kids into prison and stop judging them as being 4.5 years older than they really are. We all made mistakes as teenagers. We all did stupid things. We shouldn't have those stupid things haunt us forever. We should be judged as who and what we are.